My name is Tom Barnes and I'm Managing Director of Aston Timber. I'm on a quest to understand the factors that will shape the future of Britain's forests. For each of these films, I have spoken to an expert who is battling for a better future for our woodlands. During this series, we have learnt that almost half of the woodland in this country is unmanaged and not providing the ecological, the environmental and the social benefits that a healthy woodland can. In the last film, Gabriel Hemery pointed out that while we're all rushing to plant more trees, we're not really looking after the trees that we already have. So why is this? With so little tree cover in this country, why are we not looking after this precious resource better? Well, it seems that part of the answer is in the fact that woodlands, particularly in England, are so fragmented. Small woodlands, defined as those under 20 hectares, make up around 40% of the total woodland cover in this country. Now compare that to the figure for the amount of unmanaged woodland, which is also around 40%. And it's not too much of a leap to conclude that the two are linked. To find out more about this, our producer Charlie travelled to Dartmoor to talk to Doug King-Smith, who, along with his wife Claire, own the Hillyfield Woodland Farm. Their work has been described by the Royal Forestry Society as a first-class case study for other owners and managers of small-scale woodland. Charlie asked Doug to describe his experiences of bringing a small-scale woodland back under management.
The Hillyfield is a woodland restoration project here on Dartmoor. We've been managing this place for 10 years. It was neglected before we bought it, and since buying it we have restructured the entire woodland due to disease, due to Phytophthora ramorum. It hadn't been managed for 40 years since the planting of a huge swathe of larch. So the ancient woodland area had been felled from oak and chestnut and planted with Japanese larch as a kind of fast-growing building crop. But unfortunately, a year after buying the land, that became infected with Phytophthora ramorum, and we were forced to fell the entire plantation of larch, which scuppered our plans from what we wanted to do, was to slowly restore the woodland, to restore the remnants of the native broadleaf, but through halo thinning, so replacing it as a structured, diverse woodland growth. Whereas what we've had to do is clear fell and restructure 60-70% of the woodland here. In order to do that, I was way out of my depth. I hadn't even done a chainsaw certificate myself when I bought the land. I'd bought it using a chainsaw but not for felling, and so I undertook my training and helped other people get training. So I ran a forester's workshop for women in forestry then. So we managed to train up 6 women in forestry and then start the felling process. As well as that, we've been working to develop a woodland culture. So that is the working of a woodland for not only for the biodiversity, so that's all the habitats that the woodland supports, but for the people that enjoy and work and learn in the woods. So we've worked with volunteers largely, as well as run workshops and hosted events. So we've run a few events called the Woodland Olympics. So that's celebrating all the things around woodland, such as the craft, the working horses, machinery, and opening people's eyes to the fact that Dartmoor itself, although it's known for being a vastly open moorland landscape, it's actually rich in these small woodlands that are largely unmanaged. So the Hillyfield is an example of a place that when you put the people in and invest the capital and man hours, it's how to restore that woodland to become a vibrant place for the products and the community. Well, how's it been? It hasn't been easy restoring the woods. Just to take that on itself from 40 years of neglect, to put in the rides, to deal with disease, to restructure a woodland thinking about pests and about resilience is a huge investment itself. One of the hardest things we had to face was a 6-year planning battle about the forestry need for a workshop and a wood drying barn. We had put in a prior notification for that, but the authority had refused that, and it took us to a public inquiry to actually get to the agreement with Dartmoor National Park that actually it was valued, it was a positive way of looking after the land, and also working with volunteers was disputed as being not forestry, whereas in that public inquiry it was shown yes, that is what's supported by the National Park. We've had great fortune that we had DEFRA funding to help support the building of the barns. The difficulty was that we had to commit to building 3 barns in a year. We've been working with Tom Hilliard Building in the delivery of the barn build, and Henry Russell has come on board. He's actually led 3 workshops in timber framing and also been the master builder raising the barns. So we were very lucky to get him on board because he has 40 years, I think, of timber framing experience. And today what we've been doing is seeing the machinery store frame be erected. So it's a very exciting moment, and it's engaged a lot of people in the local community as well as a number of volunteers, and it's up. So my hopes and fears for small woodlands are difficult to sum up. It's amazing to be so invested in a process and in a place, and to have faced such difficulty in that. So my hopes are that woodland culture is restored, which means people love woodlands and all of the ecosystems that thrive within a healthy managed woodland. It's a hope that we can see the woodlands that are neglected restored in Britain. So half of our woodlands are still undermanaged or not managed at all. It's that those woodlands are integrated into their communities with people working, deriving a living from working their woodlands, and that the timber is used locally, so we're not importing so much timber. The fears are based on the experience of trying to do that. The primary one is pests and disease. So here, over 10 years, I've had to fell thousands of trees because of disease, and I've planted more, but this year I've witnessed the squirrel damage on the oak trees that is devastating to see. Other fears are the top-down thinking, a lack of understanding of the needs to bring woodlands into management, and the needs for structures, the needs for infrastructure, access, tracks, machinery. One thing that's really important is the small woodlands are actually the largest land area of woodlands. So the current funding streams and restoration projects are geared at larger areas of land, which make it difficult for the small woodlanders to access the funding that would help bring in the initial investment to restore the small woodlands. And lastly, it's that we have some good changes in effect for the firewood industry, which is saying we need to sell dry firewood rather than wet firewood, because in the UK people aren't used to seasoning it themselves. They expect to be sold dry wood. The problem we have with that is the proposals are that there's an accreditation scheme which is costing something like £500 to join and be accredited, which for small woodlands who only sell locally, that's quite a high investment to make to be able to sell to the consumer directly. So without some significant changes of either networking small woodlands together where they can dry their wood in kilns or have large wood stores like we've built ourselves here, it won't be possible to sell that dry wood. ELMS is the Environmental Land Management Stewardship, which is the new funding stream taking over from the single payment scheme that we have at the moment. And there's a national discussion going on to see what's going to be best for our woodlands. My main contribution is to suggest that woodland restoration is given a priority over planting, and all planting is made to have a decent planting plan and management plan, because without that we're just going to have more neglected woodlands. And equal to that is the importance that woodlands need to be able to add value to the products grown on site. So making a living through managing the woodlands will mean that they will always be managed. And with that, there needs to be a recognition that forestry is not just cutting and planting trees. It's also the enjoyment of woods, the education that can take place, and the other activities which are forest-based, be that foraging or going for a walk.
What an inspiring guy. Doug clearly has a huge passion for his woodland and a love of spreading woodland culture. I think it'd be fair to say that the future of Britain's forests would be a lot better with more Dougs in it. Doug is succeeding because of his passion and his skill and his ability to harness the energy and the enthusiasm of volunteers. But he also paints a picture of battling with local and national authorities to gain the necessary planning approval and to prove that what he is doing is even forestry. As well as this, he has to cope with a national funding strategy which doesn't seem to recognise the needs of small woodlands. And at the same time, he's having to deal with the crushing disappointment of seeing all of his larch trees killed by a pathogen and witnessing squirrels debarking all of his new saplings. It is a wonder that Doug has managed to keep up his levels of enthusiasm. And overall, it's easy to see why landowners have decided not to invest time and money in their own small woodlands. How do we move forward then? Well, I think firstly, we should recognise and celebrate that individuals can make a difference. It is very easy to feel a sense of helplessness and despair in the face of environmental breakdown. But Doug and his team have shown us that individuals can repair and regenerate landscapes. Secondly, we should appreciate that volunteers are an untapped resource and a strong woodland culture can draw people in. Doug has demonstrated that people will give their time if they have a connection to the place and if they feel that there are some benefits, so if they're learning new skills or if they're joining a new community. We must also keep nudging government land use policy in the right direction, because with the right incentives in place, landowners may be persuaded to start tackling the challenges and invest their time and money in their small woodlands. This interview has opened my eyes to the fact that ultimately we are not going to see increased levels of woodland management in this country until we have policy and funding in place that reflects the specific needs of small woodlands and their owners. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to our channel for more of these films.